You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos Country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I'm your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, I saw your Iowa Hawkeyes. I actually watched them, and I gotta say, Tristan Wirfs, he's got to be my pick for the Broncos now. I mean, I'm becoming a big time fan, and it'd be awesome to have two Iowa players in a row for the Broncos in the draft.
Yeah, he is. I mean, there's a reason he was number one overall player on Bruce Feldman's freak list. He's only in his third year in the program, and he broke the all-time hang cling power lift record, did 4 reps of 450 pounds, which broke Brandon Scherf's record, former, I think he was 6th overall pick for the Redskins a few years ago, although that was Scherf's 5th year in the program. This is just Wirf's 3rd, just 20 years old. I mean, he's pretty incredible. So it'll be fun to see him progress this season, and Iowa could walk away with 2 top 10 picks, which is, that's pretty incredible.
Well, it just shows they're a program that does well at training players to be NFL players.
Yeah, it's a developmental program.
Right. It's not, I hate to say this to you, but I think you already know this. They're not really a championship caliber program.
Nope. They don't recruit like it. They probably never will.
Right. And so that's just kind of the place where they're at. But man, I think a lot of people are starting to notice just how much talent comes through that place, especially you got offensive line. They've always been known for that, but even their wide receivers look pretty good. They got a good running back who's breaking tackles left and right. We'll see what happens with Nate Stanley. I mean, there's definitely talent there, so it'll be fun to watch them. Their schedule, though, I'm sorry, man, that's a bummer.
It's tough, but they play Rutgers this week, so whatever. I'm more excited for the Colorado-Nebraska game this upcoming week.
Oh, that's going to be two programs trying to get back to where they used to be.
Yeah, exactly. Both teams, although I would have picked Nebraska going into it, but they did not look so hot. And all this talk about their offensive line turning around and being more physical, man, they had a tough time against South Alabama. So
yeah,
we're going to see. That's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, I was just joking with Cam about the fact that Nebraska might get upset, and then for a second there, it's starting to look like they would. But no, it's good. College football's back. NFL starts Thursday. I can't believe it. We're here, and that's when the podcast gets so much more fun. Just to actually talk real football, get to watch games, break it down. So you want to make sure to be following us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating, as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, a new affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
Fantasy football fans, listen up. Do you want to join the biggest NFL season-long tournament ever? Of course you do. If you love fantasy football like me, and we know you do, then you need to enter the $3.5 million Best Ball Championship on draft. You heard me right. $3.5 million in real money. Frickin' huge. It's a season-long tournament, but with no management. Just set it and forget it. Once you're done drafting, that's it. No trades, no waiver wire. You don't even have to set your lineup week to week. Your best players get automatically started, and you'll get the best score every week, guaranteed. No salary caps. Play in a real-life snake draft, just like you play with your friends in a season-long league. For a limited time only, you can get a free entry into the Best Ball Championship when you make your first deposit, but you have to use our promo code HUDDLE. That's right, a free shot at $1 million just by using the promo code HUDDLE when you make your first deposit on draft. Just search for Draft in the App Store or go to draft.com and come play for free. But don't forget to use the promo code HUDDLE.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, Carl. Well, thank God. I know it's beggars can't be choosers, but thank God preseason football is over. And we actually have real football to to really look forward to here. And I know, like, preseason gets to be that time, like in August, July. We're all excited for preseason. And then it gets here, and it's just such a I don't even know if I want to say a letdown. That makes me sound spoiled, but it's just like the quality of the product is such a downer from not, the star players aren't playing, but also like the scheme and everything as well. It's not great.
Right. Well, and it's hard. It used to be very traditional. Every team kind of built up to that third preseason game. And so that third preseason game, you knew you were at least going to get a half of football of what you would consider as close to real football as you could. Well, now a lot of teams are resting their starters the entire preseason, or getting them in there for maybe 1 or 2 series. And so you're just not seeing a lot of what you used to see that at least made it halfway quality. And so, yeah, I mean, I was excited for the preseason. At first, I was excited about the Broncos having 5 preseason games. By the 5th one, I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, just in this game. And I mean, partly just because of the injuries the Broncos have suffered. I mean, they were the kind of the walking crippled there for a while. And so, yeah, it's good to finally be at some real football. And today we just wanted to spend a little bit of time just kind of digging into the Broncos schedule. And as I was typing this up, I mean, I've looked at the schedule many times, but just typing it game after game, it's a brutal schedule, man.
It's supposedly the second toughest in the NFL, only behind the Raiders. And the only reason the Raiders is considered tougher, essentially, is because they have to play Denver, where Denver gets to play Oakland. Not that Denver is great or very respected right now, but I think that speaks more towards Oakland.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, it's as much as I do think the Broncos are improved this year, just to get through this schedule, there's going to have to be a lot of things that go their way, and some other teams that, especially were top teams last year, really fall off. And it happens every year. I mean, it's hard to tell just from strength of schedule based off last year's record of how a team's going to be. Great example, one of the games the Broncos are going to play, Jacksonville. 2 years ago, everybody would have been saying, oh my gosh, Jacksonville, one of the best teams in football. Last year, one of the worst. So it always kind of varies from year to year. But we just thought we'd go game by game and just kind of look at the schedule and see what the Broncos have ahead of them. And of course, starting with week 1, Monday Night Football. Bronco fans, we have to wait the longest of anybody for real football, unfortunately. But they're actually starting on the road this year at Oakland. Last time of playing in Oakland before they moved to Las Vegas. And I mean, we're hitting the ground running here. Key division game right off the bat. Really, if the Broncos lose this one, things could spiral pretty quickly, wouldn't you say?
As terrible as it is to sound, week 1 is a must-win for Denver. Like, if they have any sort of playoff aspirations, you really cannot go down in the hole 0-1 playing against a team like Oakland, because, I mean, honestly, this is probably one of their 4 or 5 easiest wins, potential wins, on the schedule. So if you have hopes of contending for the division this year, or even contending for a wild card spot, this is a must win. And that's scary to say week 1, but looking at the schedule, it's not great.
Right. And starting on the road, something, like I said, the Broncos haven't done in a while. There's a lot of things kind of stacked against them here, especially at the beginning of the schedule, that, I mean, all the players have been saying all the right things, but it would be, once they start losing, we'll see if they continue to say the same things.
Yep. It's easy to be part of the team and put up with stuff when you are the hope of the new season's going or you're winning.
Right.
You know, that's the big thing. So, yeah, I think this is, obviously we're going to do our Scout's Eye preview, so you guys check out for that, so we'll get more in depth on this game. But I think the Broncos have to win this game. So if we are coming down to it, I think we have to give the Broncos a win here.
Yeah. I do think the Broncos win this one. I think they have more talent. I think that just looking at some of the strengths of the Broncos compared to the weaknesses of the Raiders, I think they line up pretty well. We'll get into that more in the Scout's Eye preview that we're going to talk about. But just for this, I actually do think the Broncos go to Oakland and get a win. I think when you're looking at top to bottom, the starting lineup, the Broncos look pretty good. It's later in the season that I get a little bit more worried, say some injuries start showing up and depth becomes an issue.
Yeah. I mean, that's true for every team, but the Broncos especially. I mean, the depth of every unit is not great. And I mean, that's what happens when you miss out on a class like they did in the 2017 class, essentially. I mean, I saw a good friend of the pod, Sayer Bettinger, had a tweet the other day showing how many guys are from that 2018 class. And, that's a good thing, but it's kind of a double-edged sword because a lot of those guys are on this team because they have to fill spots that the 2017 class didn't.
Right.
So do they deserve to be here? Like if this was an average roster, how many of those guys would be on the roster? So it's worth noting. We'll see how it plays out. But I think the main thing here, we're going to go through the schedule, yada, yada, going to come away with a win or loss for the Broncos and it come to the end. So I think we got to give them a W for the Raiders game. So the Broncos are starting off 1-0.
All right. Now moving on to week 2 versus Chicago. First home game for the Broncos. And I mean, last year they really were one of the best teams in football. They easily had the best defense in football. Takeaways galore, all those kind of things. Now, offensively, they were average, would you say?
Well, I mean, super inconsistent. I'd say average, and you saw some peaks, but you also saw a lot of incompetency as well. So, I mean, that's what you get for a decently raw, high-risk, high-reward quarterback playing there in Mitch Trubisky. So a lot of talent, a lot of tools. They have a solid offensive line around him and stuff like that, but it's a high variance.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering a little bit just their decision to get rid of their running back. I'm trying to remember Howard.
Yeah.
Jordan Howard, because I always thought he was a pretty darn good running back, but they got a new one. And rookie David Montgomery, he looked pretty good this preseason. And I mean, we've talked about this roster a little bit in the past, but they have a pretty darn good roster top to bottom, but they're only going to go as far as Mitch Trubisky can take them.
Yeah, indeed. So great defense, good team. However, I have this tidbit here that I think is the reason I'm going to give the Broncos a W against a team that is probably going to be favored against them, making Denver Broncos the home dogs. But Denver, since they opened up the new stadium, whatever name it's going to be, in 2011, you know what the Broncos' home record is? Did you see this tweet of mine today?
Is it like 21-1?
21-1 in weeks 1 and 2 at home since opening the new stadium. And it goes beyond that, too. It's not just the stadium, it's the altitude. In Denver, in the first 2 weeks of the season at home, Denver's all-time record, 51-8-2. And that's going back to the 1966 merger. So a lot of people, the Broncos, and I hate to be the guy to kind of push the brakes there, but the Broncos will typically start off on a really hot start. Like last year, they beat the Seahawks and Raiders at home 2-0. 2 years ago, Dallas came to town. Everybody's riding high on Dallas, and Denver's defense suffocated them. Denver starts off hot because there's the number of factors, but a big thing is that altitude in September, teams aren't conditioned yet at the same level as Denver is. They tend to lose that big advantage as the season wears on, but early on, it's a big conditioning thing. So I think if this game was in Chicago, I'd definitely go the Bears, but I'm going to go with the trend here. 21-1 is too much to not go with. Obviously, it's 21-2. If they lose, that's still incredible. There's an advantage there, but I'm going with the Broncos because I think people aren't going to be expecting it. And I didn't even touch on Fangio's understanding of Nagy, the new head coach, the relatively new head coach with the Bears, and Trubisky as well. So I think that's going to be a tough game for Trubisky and that Bears offense, and the Broncos are going to keep that just incredible trend going.
I can't disagree with you. I mean, I saw that tweet and went, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like, I remember it seemed like there for a while, the Broncos always had to go play in Miami in September.
Yep.
And always seemed to be a loss. Just, you go down to that heat, that humidity. It just, the home advantage at the beginning of the season, at the end of season, always seems to be the biggest for a lot of teams. I mean, for New England, at the end of the season, when it's cold, it's windy, all those kind of things, they got a nice advantage. Same with Green Bay, same with Chicago, all those kind of things. But for the Broncos, it is that early altitude in some heat. Broncos always seem to be the most conditioned. Definitely a win.
All right, so the Broncos starting off 2-0.
Woo.
And, again, Broncos have been pretty consistently hot starters. But starting off 2-0, I mean, that's exactly what you want. If the team is going to make the playoffs this season, starting off 2-0 and starting off that first quarter very hot is good. Next game at Green Bay. I'm sorry, I do not see the Broncos walking out with a win in this game. I mean, I know that there's a lot of new factors here with the Packers and the new staff, the new scheme and everything, but the Packers, I feel like they've made some adjustments on defense. They have a decent offensive line and decent weapons, and Aaron Rodgers, for my money, still the best quarterback in football in a singular game. So I think the Packers are going to win this game here. And fun fact, I was actually at the last Broncos-Packers game in Green Bay, and I saw Rodgers. I think he threw for 4 touchdowns and ran another one in. So I'm not expecting them to do that good, the Packers to do that good, or the Broncos that bad. But I think this is going to be a loss for the Broncos in Green Bay.
The Packers made one of the biggest additions of the entire offseason, adding Billy Turner to that offensive line. Just kidding.
Hey, man, Billy, I would love him in Denver still.
I know.
The contract.
I think, every Bronco fan, I think, would at this point, after they've seen what the offensive line looked like. No, they added Jimmy Graham to that offense. He's going to be tough for the Broncos. Like I said, offensive line looks still very, very strong. One of the best left tackles, if not the best left tackle in football.
The best. Yeah.
And, pretty darn good right tackle as well. Just entire solid group. Aaron Rodgers healthy. I think he's probably going to be a little revitalized with having a new offense that's actually going to challenge him a little bit. Adding Adrian Amos to that defense, Darnell Savage. I mean, they've just added some nice pieces there to this entire group. Defensively, again, Preston Smith is another one that they added. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Zadarius Smith, isn't he one that they added as well?
And they drafted Rashawn Gary and brought in Darnell Savage. And Jair Alexander is entering his second season.
Right.
So
this is one of my dark horses to actually compete for the Super Bowl. I mean big part because of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
But I think looking at this entire roster, like I said, I think things with the old coach, I'm not saying he was a bad coach, just I think things had gotten stale. That happens sometimes. I mean, you look at Seattle, they've had to kind of get rid of a lot of their pieces because the players stopped listening to their coach. And so now they had to bring in some new talent and see what they can get going there. And with the Broncos, I have a loss as well on this one. I mean, on the road at Green Bay, very tough place to go play. I think they're a little outmatched in this one.
Alrighty. So now the next game, Broncos play the Jags. Filippo is now going to be the offensive coordinator there, which I'm really interested to see how that meshes with Doug Marrone and Tom Coughlin, kind of wanting to run more of an old school smash mouth approach. Nick Foles is there. This game's in Denver. I think the Jags do have a great defense, and I expect this to be a relatively low scoring game, but I really do think the Broncos win this one. I think Jacksonville's one of the true contenders for the first overall pick in the upcoming draft. And while I do like the defense, I mean, Jalen Ramsey is a great player, Miles Jack. They have obviously Yannick Ngakoue, Calais Campbell, and seventh overall draft pick Josh Allen rushing the edge. Great defense, but I don't love this offense at all. Offensive line is kind of hit or miss. Quarterback can only go so far, and the weapons on the outside, I mean, D.D. Westbrook, DJ Chark, I just don't see them having enough offensive firepower to really contend with the Broncos unless the Broncos really shoot themselves in the foot. So I'm going with the Broncos win at this one. Main factor being the Broncos are at home.
Yeah, if it was in Jacksonville, I'd probably give this one to Jacksonville. But like you said, just weapons-wise, there's nobody that scares you. I mean, Leonard Fournette, if he's healthy, can be a scary weapon, but there's nobody to force the box to be 7 or less. A lot of teams are probably going to load up the box and say, Nick Foles, go beat us. Prove that you can be that full-time starter, actually deserve your contract kind of guy. And for me, I've never been a big Nick Foles fan. I think he's an okay starter. I just never viewed him as, I mean, when he became that Super Bowl champion, everybody's going, oh my gosh, this guy better than Carson Wentz. And I'm going, no. Come on, people. He had a nice run. Nothing against that. But Joe Flacco had a nice run too. Is anybody calling Joe Flacco a franchise quarterback? Not really.
Not unless it's ironic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I think this will be a low scoring game, but that's exactly what both teams really kind of play towards anyway. And with it being a home game, you got to give it to the home team. So nice start for the Broncos here. I just don't know how much it's going to continue.
Yep. Alrighty, well, that's the first quarter of the season. The Broncos are 3-1. Now we're on to week 5 at the Chargers. The Broncos won a close game at Los Angeles last year. Los Angeles doesn't really have a home and field advantage because they don't really have much of a fan base. Bless you fans who are the hardcore Chargers fans, probably not listening here, but you guys are real ones. But I don't know. I know this Chargers team does not have an offensive line, but I think that because the Broncos won there last year, I don't think the Chargers are going to be asleep on Denver at all, especially at 3-1. So I have the Chargers winning this game because the Broncos aren't at home with that altitude advantage.
So what are we going to do here if we disagree?
I guess we need to we can leave that one and come back to it.
Okay.
But I don't think the Broncos are going to sweep the Chargers. There's just no way. So it needs to be 1-1 for me.
Right. And I'm with you on that. I guess with Russell Okung out, Melvin Gordon, who knows what's going to happen with him, Derwin James being out, I feel like this is actually going to be the easier one for the Broncos to win of the two, especially since, like you said, there's not really a home field advantage. If anything, it's actually more of a home game for the Broncos. I mean, I've watched those games on TV, and it looks like there's more orange than powder blue. And so for me, honestly, I feel more comfortable giving the Broncos the win in this one compared to their second game against the Chargers, where they might have Okung back and Derwin James might be back from injury.
Okay, so I'll give you this win if we agree the Broncos lose the one in Denver.
Okay, that's fine by me.
All right, the Broncos, Week 6 opponent, Tennessee Titans, a team that actually seems to be on the rise. I think they have a very underrated defense, have one of the better young secondaries in the game, have some emerging guys rushing the quarterback as well. They have some weapons in the pass game, and Mike Vrabel seems to be a guy who could be trending in the right direction. I mean, it just feels like this is a dark horse team. I mean, did they make the playoffs last year? I don't even remember. They were very close. Okay. They were very close to the playoffs. That. Okay. I remember they beat the Chiefs.
Yes.
In that first game, yeah. So I know this game's in Denver, but I honestly think the Broncos are going to end up losing this one. They're riding high right now. They're 4-1 on the season. I think that the Titans, solid enough team on both sides of the ball and special teams, that I think the Broncos end up losing this one.
So this is the team I have the most variance on for the AFC.
Yeah.
Just partly because of, who's even their starting quarterback?
It will be Mariota.
Okay.
And Taylor Lewan will be back by this game too.
That's true. I guess part of me actually would feel more comfortable giving Tennessee the win if Tannehill was starting. I've watched him some of this preseason because I wanted to watch our new offensive lineman, and I thought he looked so much better than Mariota in the games I watched.
Interesting.
But, that's just me. But I don't know. Like I said, I could see this team being a 6-10 team. I could see him being a 10-6 playoff team.
Yeah.
And part of it's the AFC South right now is a little bit up in the air. I think most people have Houston winning it with Indy losing luck, but it's still all four teams have reasons to be excited and reasons to have concerns for sure.
Yep.
And
I think Houston is the favorite now with the Colts and the Titans pretty close, and then the Jags in fourth place.
But I'll go with you. I'll go ahead and give it a loss here. It's
a toss-up game, but I think that I'm going to try to not drink as much Kool-Aid as possible. So Tennessee, they're a team that they can win those tough games. I trust their system more than the Broncos right now. And this just feels like a game that Denver is going to not win.
Right.
So especially looking ahead for this next game.
Yeah.
Is a big thing as well. So week 7, the Broncos play the Kansas City Chiefs at Denver. They were close last season. It was a misfire from Case Keenum away from winning it. And I think Kansas City is going to be riding pretty high in this, maybe even be undefeated. But I think they're going to come into Denver and lose. That's another reason I was more adamant about the Tennessee loss. So I really think the Broncos, early season, catching Kansas City at home, I think the Broncos have a chance, and I think they're going to play grinded out, close game. And I think the Broncos are going to end up winning on the short week for the Chiefs to prepare.
Well, that's the other thing to kind of think about here is it is the Thursday night game.
Yeah. I think that favors the Thursday night team. Typically, the home team wins like 70% of the time.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, and so I'm with you. I'd probably give this one to the Broncos too. Obviously the Chiefs, they were one of the best teams in all of football last year. And I do like some of the pieces they've added, but I do think being at Denver, I think they definitely got a chance here. And so yeah, I'll give them 1-2.
And also coming off another reason to justify the Tennessee loss, Broncos have a short week to prepare for Kansas City. So you never want to say, they're going to look ahead, but I feel like looking at it from where we're at, that's about as most justifying, hey, they're looking ahead as we can get. So, all right, week 8, the Broncos, they're going to Indy. I think this game's a toss-up. I'm going to go with Indy being the home team. They still have a solid infrastructure around Brissett. They have a really good offensive line that can help negate the Broncos' biggest advantage, being the pass rush. And I think, again, coming off of a high win against the Chiefs, I think you're going to see them come out flat against the Colts. Also, this is my wedding day, so I think they'll probably just lay a stinker for me Sunday. I don't have to worry about it.
They're not going to win for you? No,
I think I've seen them lose at Indy like 2 times. I have 2 best men, and both of them are Colts fans, so they're probably going to get back at me, and they'll probably do that by having the Colts beat the Broncos.
All right, well, I'll agree with you. I mean, it is at Indy. They are still a strong team without Luck.
Yeah,
it's crazy. He finally gets a great team around him and retires.
Too late.
I know, and I understand he's hurting. That's all of it. But I feel for the guy that it took this long to finally get so much talent around him, and then to see it all wasted. And so it's sad. But yeah, no, I have Indy winning that one too.
Alrighty, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but next is the Cleveland Browns. I don't fully believe in the Browns as a team that is incredible coming into the season, but I think they have an underrated defense right now. Myles Garrett has legitimately a chance to win Defensive Player of the Year, and the offense has added weapons, and I just think that the Browns are much more talented than the Broncos are right now. I mean, it is a little bit of a keg of dynamite, so to speak. I mean, Baker Mayfield, first-time head coach, Odell Beckham Jr., there's some personalities there, but I don't know. I think that on paper, this Cleveland team is talented, and where we have the Broncos right now, win-loss-wise, I think this is probably a loss.
Yeah, I mean, watching Cleveland in the preseason, they look pretty darn strong on both sides, and I just don't trust the Bronco tackles to hold up very well.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a big one for there, and it is at home, but this one seems like it's destined to be a loss.
Yep, I do not disagree with you. So, unfortunately, they're coming off 2 losses there, but the Broncos have some wins there, and the next is the bye week. So we are going to take a break here. When we'll get back to talk about the rest of the schedule, or a little bit of prediction here, breaking down the Broncos schedule. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. It's a fact. Refinancing your credit card balances can lower your interest rate and save you money, and you don't have to be a financial expert to do it. Right now, you can get a credit card consolidation loan from my friends at Lightstream with a rate as low as 5.95 APR with autopay, lower than the average credit card interest rate of over 19% APR. That means you could save thousands of dollars on interest. Get a loan from $5,000 to $100,000. Just for my listeners, apply now to get a special interest rate discount. The only way to get this discount is to go through lightstream.com/huddleup. That's lightstream.com/huddleup. Subject to credit approval. Rate includes a 0.5% auto pay discount. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/huddleup for more information.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell along with Carl Dumler. So far, we've picked the Broncos through the first 9 weeks of the season. And hey guys, the Broncos have a winning record. 5-4. That would be a big shock for a lot of people, especially the media, going into the season. Obviously, some toss-up games at Indy, at Indy's a toss-up game, Tennessee's a toss-up game, but also the Broncos sneaking a win against the Chiefs and at Chargers as well. So 5-4 seems about as optimistic as you could get, considering, people always say, the Broncos were 2 plays away from beating X, Y, and Z last year. Well, they were also 2 plays away from losing to ABC as well. So a little bit of give and take there. And I feel like 5-4 is a pretty realistic spot to think the Broncos will be at going into the Week 10 bye. Say you? What do you say?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a little shocked that they'd be a little bit at a winning record at this point. I mean, you and I have both been a little bit down on what the Broncos are going to be able to do just record wise this year. But the big thing I think this year that you're going to see is there's going to be a lot of close games.
Yeah.
The last couple of years under Vance Joseph,
he who shall not be named, I guess.
Yeah. There's been a lot of blowout losses. That's the thing is you've just seen the team, they get down early in the game. The defense looks pretty good usually that first quarter. And then when they see that the offense is going to do nothing, they just seem to have given up. And so there's been a lot of games where it just got blown out real quick. I went to the Broncos-Patriots game a couple years ago, and it was just that way. The defense started out strong, trying real hard, and then the offense just couldn't do anything. And you could just see the defense just struggled to really want to keep going out there and giving everything just to see the offense throw it away.
It's disheartening.
It is. And so I do think with a little bit stronger offense, a little bit stronger coaching staff that keeps guys focused in, and especially the defense keeps them fresh in the idea of not just playing man coverage every single snap. I think there's a lot of things that'll keep them in some closer games and maybe get them a couple wins that people don't expect, but it could also mean a couple close losses that leave you going, oh, what could have been? And so it's going to be that kind of season, I think, for the Broncos. But if they're 5-4 at the bye week, I think everybody should be feeling pretty darn good about that.
Yep. I definitely agree with you there. Alrighty, well, week 11, the Broncos have a bye week to prepare for it, but they're heading to one of the tougher places to play in the NFL, in Minnesota. Minnesota is coming off somewhat of a down year last year. The offensive line was an issue for them, but they've done some stuff to re-solidify it, building a system better for the Broncos, or better for Kirk Cousins. They're, more Dalvin Cook this season. They brought in Irv Smith as well. Garrett Bradbury looks like he could be the Pro Bowl center this season. I mean, he's got crazy tools and obviously a great defense. So I know the Broncos have the bye week to prepare for it, but I think this is too tough of a game for them on paper. I think that if this was at home, Broncos could pull this one out, but I think on the road, this is a loss.
You're right. It's going to be a tough one for them. The Vikings, I think of any team in the NFL, probably have the most pressure on them of any team maybe Houston. I guess I shouldn't say anything. Houston maybe has more pressure on them, but just with how much they spent on Kirk Cousins, he's got a ton of pressure to take him to the playoffs this year. They spent a lot of money on getting this roster where it needs to be. And so definitely a team that's going to be focused in and probably going to be in the playoff hunt. And at home, these are the games they can't lose. I think they're going to be focused in. So I'm with you. Loss for the Broncos.
Alrighty, moving on to week 12 now. A second straight week with a noon kickoff on the road and a place that the Broncos historically have struggled at Buffalo. Buffalo is an emerging team. Josh Allen looks like a baby Cam Newton out there sometimes. A little more erratic, but has some tools. They've helped solidify the offensive line a bit around him, added some weapons. John Brown, a guy that the Broncos are interested in. And quietly, the Bills have one of the best defenses in the NFL. Last season, according to DVOA from Football Outsiders, the Bills had the second best defense in the NFL. Now you have Tremaine Edmonds, who I think still might be the youngest player in the NFL, despite being drafted 2 years ago, emerging, and he looked incredible in preseason. And added Ed Oliver. And this team looks like one that it's going to be a low-scoring affair, but I think the Broncos aren't going to be able to slug with them on the road. So I have the Broncos losing this game as well.
The Broncos have typically struggled going to Buffalo. That's another place that they just seem to not do well in. And that second straight week of being a 12 o'clock start time, 12 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock for you in Colorado. And yeah, I don't like this matchup. We saw, was it 2 years ago? Everybody was riding high with the Broncos until they played Buffalo. Was that 2 years ago?
Yeah, the one where Von Miller, here, let me help you up.
Oh yeah, that's right. The stupid penalty. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's right. But no, I mean, it's a pretty strong roster, especially like you said, the defense. I mean, they're going to go as far as Josh Allen can take them. But I do like what they have there, and I think they're going to be a dark horse playoff team this year. And I mean, they've added to the offensive line quite a bit. It just, yeah, I don't like this game for the Broncos.
Nope. And Broncos should travel a little better this year. I mean, in general, defense and run game typically travel, but I don't see the passing game doing enough to really get those third downs when they need to, prevent those 3-and-outs when they need to, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right, well, bad news for you guys. The Broncos are going to continue the losing streak here. Carl, according to our deal, Broncos win at Chargers, but they lose to the Chargers at home. Week 13, lost to the Chargers. Who knows what their health will be like then, but Derwin James should be back by this game, and I mean, him by himself is a difference maker. So I think Broncos have a good chance to split with the Chargers. I mean, if they split with the Chargers and the Chiefs each, I know people want the Broncos to win every game, but that's a win considering how good the talented those rosters are. So a loss here for the Broncos against the Chargers.
Yeah, this is the meat of the schedule here. Yeah, I mean, you got what, 4 out of 5 games on the road, a lot of early start times, right. So it just, I mean, unfortunately, this is where you kind of see things fall apart for the Broncos, and you can see why maybe we've been a little bit down on the Broncos' chances for high success this year. I mean, if they want to be a playoff team, they've got to win probably 2 of the 4 road games here. Yeah. And that's asking a lot.
Yep. Alrighty, well, the Broncos, despite starting off 5-4, they are riding a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-game losing streak now, and it doesn't get any easier. Noon kickoff at Houston, a team that gave up the future to contend today, bringing in a really talented left tackle and Kenny Stills to help solidify that wide receiver group. Deshaun Watson, one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. This is a team that's going to be, I mean, probably AFC South favorites right now. And if this game was in Denver, I'd give it to Denver. But God, I can't. Not at Houston on a noon kickoff. I just can't. I got to give it to Houston.
Yep, I'm with you.
All right, and then a game that I have tickets to, which guaranteed loss because of that, because I've never seen the Broncos win a game that I've been in attendance at, and I'm 0-7 at Kansas City. Another noon kickoff right now, though it could be flexed. And we gave the Broncos the win at home. I can't see them winning at Arrowhead in December. So this is another loss.
Yep. They're typically from November.
Sucks.
I know. From November on, Kansas City at home is one of the toughest teams. Yeah. It doesn't matter their record. It doesn't matter their talent. But then you add in that they are one of the top 5 talented teams in the NFL at home at noon kickoff. There's just so many things here that you can look at and say it would take a minor miracle for the Broncos to win that one.
Yep, I agree with you. And so the Broncos losing 6 games in a row there. Man, things are looking rough. However, they close out the season with probably their easiest 2 games in the entire season, which makes me a little sad. The Broncos are losing 6 games in a row there, and they're, what are they here? 6-8 right now, or something like that, 5-9. You would like to see them play Drew Lock here with these softballs in these last 2 weeks. I mean, quote unquote softballs. Every game in the NFL is hard. But versus Detroit and then versus Oakland, I think the Broncos will win both of those games, perhaps to their own detriment, because they might lose 8 slots in the draft, if that's the scenario. I mean, seriously, that's what the Falcons did last year. The Falcons would have been picking like 6. They ended up picking like 14, I think, because they won the last 2 weeks. Which, I mean, that's the difference between Ed Oliver or Chris Lindstrom. So, you never know. But I think the Broncos do end up winning these last 2 weeks and finishing out the year at least a little bit strong, heading in the right direction, and hopefully seeing some youth and growth there.
Right. No, I'm with you. I mean, Detroit, just talent-wise, they're probably bottom 10 in the NFL.
I just don't trust Patricia at all. I think he's trash.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am a little surprised that I guess they're giving him an extra chance, which you got to do sometimes, but I don't think he has it for sure. And then Oakland and Denver, I don't think either team's going to have anything on the line at that point. And so I think you are going to see both teams trying to get a lot of young guys in there and see what they can do. And I just, looking at the backup quarterback situation, especially if Drew Lock is back, I feel a lot better with the Broncos than I do with Oakland.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Carl, I think we have to go back. I think I have a bad feeling in my stomach about giving the Broncos a loss to both Tennessee and at Indy. If the Broncos were going to win one of those games, which one would it be?
Tennessee.
Tennessee's at Denver, at Indy's at Indy. Okay, you think Tennessee?
I do. I mean, home game again. That was the one game that I was going back and forth on. I mean, that was one we kind of disagreed on. And they're such a variance team. I just don't know what they're going to be this year. I like some of their young pieces, but even there, some of them last year were inconsistent. And I like Vrabel as a coach, but I think he's still got a lot to prove in this league. I think the Broncos can take advantage of some of the things that they have going on. I think it sets up well that some of their strengths on defense line up with the strengths of the Broncos and their weaknesses. I think the Broncos can take advantage of some of them there. So I don't know. I just feel like the Broncos stand a good chance in that one.
Alrighty, well that will get us our schedule. Let's see the Broncos here. Week 1 versus Oakland, at Oakland, win, 1-0. Week 2 versus Chicago, win, 2-0. Week 3 at Green Bay, loss, 2-1. Week 4 versus Jacksonville, win, 3-1. Week 5 at Chargers, win, 4-1. Week 6 versus Tennessee, win, 6. Is that 5-1? I can't even count, Carl.
Yep,
you need to be in charge of this. Help me. 5-1. Week 7 versus the Chiefs, win, 6-1. Man, can you imagine how exciting that would be? What's coming up? Oh my God.
Man.
Week 8, loss, 6-2 at Indy. Week 9 versus Cleveland, loss, 6-3. 6-3 at the bye, so week 11 at Minnesota, 6-4. Week 12 at Buffalo, loss, 6-5. Week 13 versus the Chargers, loss. Is that 6-6? I can't count. I'm doing too much words. 6-6 at Houston, loss, 6-7. At Kansas City, loss, 6-8. Versus Detroit, win, 7-8. Versus Oakland, win, 8-8. Man, this is a gauntlet of a schedule. Warren Sharp, who does a lot of data stuff for betting in Vegas, he has the Broncos having the second hardest schedule in football. They face the highest amount of top 5 quality opponents, according to Vegas, this season, playing 4. They are the only team in NFL playing, the number of top 10 teams the Broncos play this season is 8. They are the only team with that many. And I think Warren Sharp said in an interview that's the only team that has had 8 Vegas top picks on their schedule in the last 5 years. So that's a kick to the crotch. The number of bottom 5 opponents, the Broncos only face 2. Those are both the Oakland Raiders. So that kind of stinks as well. And that they have the second lowest amount of bottom 10 opponents with only 4. So this is a really tough schedule. And obviously at this point of the season, we don't have the best idea. Injuries will change this, whatnot. This will variate a little bit, but Warren Sharp has probably the best so far as the schedule indicator, and the Broncos have just an incredibly difficult schedule this season. So we'll see what they say. Vegas has the Broncos at 7.5 wins. We're actually above Vegas. We have the Broncos at 8. So we will see what happens, but it looks like a tough one for Denver this season, if that is going to be the case. So not the best.
Right. Well, and this is where we come back to what do you consider a successful season? And I mean, if it's Super Bowl or bust, well, you're going to be disappointed most years, obviously. And so otherwise, if you've had a team that's been losing for the last couple of years, finishing 8-8, I would consider that a pretty successful season, especially when you consider the schedule.
Yep.
And if you can look at a lot of these games and say, okay, that's a pretty close game. That's a close game. I'd feel pretty darn good if the Broncos are playing how many games against top 10 teams? 8, you said?
8, the highest in the last 5 years of any team entering the season.
Well, let's say in 7 of those 8 games, they keep it within 1 score. That's pretty darn good, especially when you look at some of these offenses and what they can do on the field, like the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Packers. There's a lot of high-scoring offenses here, Houston.
Yeah.
And so if the Broncos can defensively hold them back, and if offensively they can at least look competent. I mean, we haven't seen a competent offense since 2014.
Yep.
So I'd like to see one of those every once in a while.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, long season, a lot of things can change. So many variables for the Broncos to know. You know, this is probably one of the least known teams in the NFL, given all these variable changes. So we'll see. But again, we have the Broncos going 8-8 there, going over the schedule. It's a tough one. But that just because the Broncos don't make the playoffs or, you know, finish above 500 doesn't mean it's not a successful season. But it's probably going to be a transition season. So not the worst. But Carl's going to get out of here. I'm going to bring you guys some more interview with Andre Simone at BSN talking some draft stuff, and we will be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, we have 25 guys down. We got 25 more to go. Dane Brugler's top 50 preseason 2020 draft prospects here with Andre Simone. Here we go. Number 24 here, Julian Okwara, edge from Notre Dame, 6'5", 242. Denver probably not using a first-round pick on edge, so we can move on there.
Why not? Just quadruple down on edges.
We'll talk about the ability to bring edges here soon. Don't worry, I'll tee it up for you, or maybe you'll tee it up for me, or I'll just tee up myself.
Yeah, there you go.
Number 23, Tyler Biadasz, the offensive center from Wisconsin.
I think it's pronounced badass.
Badass. I mean, it might as well.
Yeah,
so
truly.
He's not as good as we'll get to it in a second. Number 22 is Yetur Gross-Matos, edge from Penn State, 6'5", 265.
Yeah.
Number 21, Creed Humphrey, number 1 interior offensive lineman for Brugler here. So offensive center from Oklahoma. And number 20, DeAndre Swift, running back from Georgia. And I think there's probably a lot of positional value going into that area. But Swift, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he goes top 15 when it comes down to it. I think this is shaping up to be a really good class. I think this is better than last year's, just looking at the depth.
The beauty is how many offensive players are on these lists.
Yes.
Like, I feel like we've been just over and over for years now. Oh, yeah, it's a great defensive draft. On offense, meh. You know, we got to find some fits, and guys are going to get overdrafted. This year, I mean, this top 50 feels like it's just littered with offensive players, and that is such a welcome difference from years past.
However, the one position that's really hurting, probably the one position on defense the Broncos need to fortify the most.
Yep.
So, you know, whatever, what can you do? But I guess for me, the big two on this list for the Broncos would be Tyler Biadasz and Creed Humphrey. And I like both of them a fair amount. 6'4", 330 for Creed Humphrey. I think he could play either guard position as well. He actually did pretty well last year against Quinnen Williams in that playoff game. Yeah. And Tyler Biadasz, I like him a lot. However, I would have him below Garrett Bradbury for the Broncos just because Biadasz is more of that get under and drive those guys out, super strong in that point. You know, he can get to his landmarks fine, but he's not this incredible nimble athlete that you see with Garrett Bradbury. So Biadasz, the perfect power scheme, gap scheme center, not as much of a fluid mover as we saw with Bradbury.
100%. Maybe you could make him work as a right guard since Leary, you know, but yeah, I mean, he's not that like perfect sculpted in stone to be a zone blocking center like Bradbury was. Great point. Humphrey, really intriguing. That O-line was so dominant last year, though they underwhelmed a little bit in their one big test against Alabama, but so dominant, so fun to watch that group of 5 play together. 4 of those guys left. Humphrey's the one guy remaining. It'll be interesting to see how much those other 4 were really helping him and how much of a stud he is. So I'm very much in wait and see mode with him as opposed to some of the other guys here. And then just touching on Swift, I know we don't want to talk about running backs too much. I'm with you 100%. I think conservatively, he's going to go in the top 15. This guy, call me crazy, reminds me so much of LaDainian Tomlinson. And I mean, LT's probably, to me, one of the 10 greatest NFL players, at least of my lifetime, if not of all time. So I
use positional value too much. I could never do that.
Yeah, I believe it. Jim Brown might be my second greatest player of all time, and Barry Sanders is in my top 5. So I do not care about that on all-time lists.
You didn't even list the best running back of all time. Walter Payton,
Davis. Man. Yeah. I call my wife Sweetness. She's from Chicago, so that's my tribute to Walter Payton. But
okay.
So anyways, I think Swift is just going to be a stud because he can impact the game in all those different areas and be really special. He's got all the tools. So yeah, I get ranking him lower because of positional value. I think that he'll go really, really high. But this is that was an intriguing tier you listed off right there.
Yeah. The two interior offensive linemen from Humphrey and Biadasz stick out the most to me. However, I don't know if honestly, if you're going with that guy and you see him as a plug and play guy forever and he's your dude, fine. but I really think that you can get some mid-tier guys with Mike Munchak, cobble that together, and develop a pretty good unit. You already have a high second-round pick in Dalton. Do you really need to spend another high resource on the interior offensive line? I mean, you could. It depends on how the board falls. Depends on how free agency goes, of course. If one of these guys is there and, you're drafting, let's say, 41 and one of these guys is there, well, hell, whatever. But I feel like if they're using a premium selection on the offensive line, this guy has to have tackle ability, because I trust Munchak to be able to cobble together an interior offensive line, because that's much more of the technical guys, the tackles that didn't have the foot speed or the length, and he can move them in. Am I wrong in thinking that? Or obviously 100%, we're far out.
100%. Though, I've always been a little skeptical about this Munchak fit in as the O-line coach for a zone blocking scheme. I know they had that matchup back in Tennessee when he was the head coach at one point. They were coaching up a zone scheme. I think he's much more suited for a gap power scheme. We'll see. This year will be very telling, but 100% agree. You need to exploit Munchak and the ability to develop guys, especially on the interior. And interior O-line, while it is a need, especially if Ronald Leary can never just get healthy again, it's low-ish on that need list. I mean, you've wide receiver, tackle, interior defensive line, linebacker, all those need to be addressed before we start talking about center or guard.
And you don't know. I mean, we might see a guy develop that they have on the roster right now through the season. I mean,
absolutely.
Schlottman is a guy. Maybe they'll bring back Sam Jones. We'll see. This is all going on right now as far as the roster being filled out. But I just feel like I trust Munchak to get some guy there that's at least passable. And with Reisner there, you just need one more solid interior offensive lineman to really be okay there. You don't want to have the center and the right guard both be trash. Like if you have two guys that are bad side by side, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
But I feel like you can find that guys without having to use that premium resource.
100%. That's the beauty of the zone scheme, right? That's how Shanahan built this out 30 years ago now is, we don't need to use premium picks. We can take guys like Tom Nalen who are super undervalued, but they fit our scheme. We're going to coach them up and make it all work. So, absolutely. Take advantage of your scheme and exploit it when you're roster building.
Absolutely. Well, moving on here. Number 19, Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle from South Carolina. Number 18, Trevon Diggs, cornerback from Alabama. Number 17, Derek Brown, defensive lineman from Auburn.
Okay.
Number 16, Alex Leatherwood, offensive tackle from Alabama.
Wow.
And number 15, Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle from Georgia. So the offensive linemen keep coming, man. This is great news for Broncos country, but we also have some interesting, intriguing defensive players here. I mean, Kinlaw, 6'5", 308. Some people think he has some Chris Jones ability as far as that first step. Can be a little bit of out of control, but as far as that lengthy, bursty guy that can really control that gap, he's probably somewhere closer to who was that tall, long lineman that went to Arizona State? The Bengals drafted him last year.
Tall, long lineman, Arizona State. Really
powerful, get off, but kind of out of control. That first step and the length was incredible. He was like 6'5", 320.
Yeah, I know I know who you're talking about, and it's completely slipping my mind, and it's going to kill me.
It'll come back to me.
Yeah.
I'll get it. Then Trevon Diggs, brother of Stephon Diggs. But the one that surprised me the most here on this list, well, I guess Andrew Thomas, not in the top 10 surprises me, but Derek Brown. I really like Derek Brown. Him and Cole yesterday were making plays, and I think Brown is pretty obviously the number one interior defensive lineman in this class.
Depending on your boy AJ and how you classify him. Yeah.
He's just God tier.
Yeah. That's interesting for sure. Diggs, I was like, I think he's too low. And yet I look at my board, we have him in the same exact spot at 19. So there you go. Kinlaw, I need to wait and see on him.
Yeah, traits.
I feel like we've been waiting for a while. Traits, definitely.
Yeah.
There, I'm surprised how offensive line heavy this is. Who was the other O-lineman he had in this tier with Andrew Thomas? Oh, yeah, Leatherwood,
who looked really good yesterday. Granted, not a great competition. Played right guard last season, so he has some versatility and a 6'5", 320. And I know a lot of people that I've spoken with that have NFL connections are saying this guy could end up offensive tackle 1 and could be better than Jonah Williams as far as the athleticism and length package go. So we'll see.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm still not fully convinced that he's a tackle. He's tackle worthy. Yeah. Especially at that size. I mean, that's the other thing. At that size, like, he'll never get a sniff from the Broncos unless there's yet another, like, a scheme change on offense next year, which would not be ideal for anyone. So
he's bigger than Andrew Thomas.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to that length.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and I can see that. I can see that. Yeah.
And Andrew Thomas, a lot of people have him as offensive tackle 1, top 15. Yep. I think Leatherwood, Thomas, and another one we'll be talking about here. Any of those guys could work their way up into the top 10 and be a guy that the Broncos select. So
I love Thomas.
I do too. And I love the right tackle, left tackle ability. I do wonder his ability. He's not always the most control getting to that second level. I feel like the athleticism isn't as high as the next guy we're going to talk about, but he's got great feet and he's got solid length, and his pass blocking I think is very good. So he's a plug and play guy at that left tackle for years to come. Could be left tackle 1. We will see though. There's another guy we're going to talk about here, but this whole class, like Derek Brown, Alex Leatherwood, Andrew Thomas, any of those guys, I'd be head over heels to the Broncos, adding them to the roster right now.
Absolutely, especially Thomas. Thomas, I really like his hands. He's one of those guys. He gets you on it. You know, he gets his grasp on you, and you're not escaping. Needs to be better at sealing guys off from that inside shoulder. That's where he's susceptible. And I do wonder if this will be 3 years in a row where my offensive tackle 1 coming into the season, and it is Thomas this year. Once we get, yeah, right. You would have issue with that. Once we get to, combine season, we start to talk about length deficiencies and start to knock him because his arms are like 33 inches and 3/4.
You need to have the feet to overcome it. It's a given.
True.
There's some give to it. Like if you're a great athlete and you have good technique, the length can be negated. But if you're just a moderate athlete and you're 33, they might move you inside.
Ryan Ramczyk has taught us this. But do you are my eyes deceiving me? Are you seeing any of that with his length maybe not being otherworldly?
I think it's not otherworldly, but if his technique is good enough and he can play with enough control,
100%.
And we're doing the fast pass game these days where it's a lot of 3-step drops, quick get the ball out. I'm not worried about it if the technique can be that good. Right. I do have questions about the overall athleticism. The technique, I think, and the fluidity is great, but how explosive is he? Yeah. The movements, I don't like, especially in the run game, they really did not ask him to get to the second level too often. Yeah. And that's something he's going to need to show for the NFL. So
right. Great at the point of attack, not great at the second level. That's something that really stood out to me on tape.
Yep, exactly. And I'm not sure if it's a technique issue or a footing issue or just I don't know. I haven't had the coach's tape for Thomas, so can't say for sure. Mm-hmm. But I also really love Derek Brown. Broncos are replacing 3 defensive linemen next year potentially. All 3 starters are set to hit free agency. Yeah, they might be looking to take a guy, so we'll see. Derek Brown is. I mean, the thing that's beautiful about Derek Brown is 6'4", 330 pounds. He could play 5 technique. He could play 4 or 4-eye. He could play 3. He could play 0. He could play 1. I mean, the fact that you can move him around those spots is really big. And also, I think he's not only good going upfield, but he's loose moving horizontally off the snap. So the twists and stunts that you could provide, which is a big part of this defensive front, with Brown being either that first guy to kind of dislodge and create that space for Chubb coming around the other end. I mean, the potential there is gigantic. So really just an exciting player, but that versatility and that skill set where he can move any direction with power and length.
100%. Yep.
So moving on here, we got the next guys, number 14, Christian Fulton, cornerback from LSU. I've said last year pretty early on, wow, that Greedy Williams, guys, is not the best cornerback on the field for LSU when I was watching him. And we'll see if that ends up being the case, but I'm a big fan of Fulton. There's some off-field stuff there. Yeah, we'll see. Tristan Wirfs, number 13 overall offensive tackle, 6'5", 320. Number 12 overall, Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 3 for Dane Brugler.
Oh, my.
Alabama, 6'1", 195 pounds. Number 11, C.D. Lamb, 6'1", 192 pounds, wide receiver, Oklahoma. And number 10 for him, Jordan Love, quarterback, Utah State, 6'3", 230. So we're starting to get some pretty darn elite names here right now. And two of my favorite wide receivers in the class, Jerry Jeudy is up there. Jerry Jeudy is up there with anybody in the country, in my opinion. I do love CeeDee Lamb a lot, and I think he's so elite at his skill set that if the Broncos wanted to get a great wide receiver, even though CeeDee Lamb is a prototypical X, whatever Sutton, I'm sorry. Like, Lamb is that good at the ball in the air that I wouldn't mind it that much. And he's also pretty good. The slants that he can run, that's really the big thing. Like, Sutton, over the middle, the short intermediate areas, they haven't seen that route running yet. CeeDee Lamb wins in the short area, too, along with having the ability to go up and get it. You don't want to call anybody DeAndre Hopkins, but that's the skill set that you see with the body control. It's insane. So I love CeeDee Lamb. Jerry Jeudy's probably the guy I'd prefer out of the two for the Broncos, but I'm a big fan of all of them. And before we kick it off to you, I got to say offensive tackle one, Tristan Wirfs yesterday. You probably haven't caught the Iowa-Miami game yet, but he was moved from right tackle to left tackle when Alaric Jackson went down with a knee injury. I'm not sure on the severity of that yet. And my God, there's a reason this guy was Dane Brugler's number one freak athlete. He just there was two different runs on the goal line where he just absolutely took this guy on a ride. And I understand it's Miami, Ohio, but still, the fact that he assaulted this poor defensive lineman like he did and just pushed him out, and the power that he has, the length, the fluidity, we might get a chance to see him at left tackle this season. That can put to bed all questions about, well, is he just a right tackle? Because I don't know. So he was phenomenal yesterday.
That's what we really need. That's, to me, the big question with Wirfs is, can you prove that you're that left tackle and put all those concerns at ease? Length and athleticism are there. Nasty streak can be there when he wants to be. Just put it all together, and he could easily be my offensive tackle one. I cannot believe where Jeudy is ranked here. To me, it's basically unacceptable to put Jeudy outside of a top three. He's just that unbelievable. Talk about
Do you want me to read it?
A guy that's like water. He's just so fluid. Yeah. If you want to read it, go for it. I'm all ears.
Jeudy won't set any records in the 40 time at the combine, but his play speed and dynamic route running, as well as elusiveness, are all elite. His lack of ideal size and strength are bothersome, but his electric feet allow him to easily uncover versus sticky defensive backs. So I've listened to Dane Brugler's podcast as well, and he said that the big thing for him is that Jeudy hasn't really shown amazing ability at the catch point as far as the contested catch, where that's where it separates him between Odell and Jeudy.
Sure.
Odell is that, but Odell is like Jeudy, but he has that contested catch ability on top of it. And also just the strength Jeudy needs to fill out more. And he thinks that Jeudy is somewhere, he's actually closer to a Calvin Ridley than he is an Odell, because if Calvin Ridley would have had a Tua and a Ruggs playing next to him and a Waddle, and whoever the other the sophomore wide receiver now is for Bama, then Calvin Ridley would have had similar numbers to Jeudy, but he also still really likes Jeudy. So that's where that comes from.
That scouting report reads like a more athletic Antonio Brown coming out of Central Michigan. So
true. Yeah.
And I mean, that's who I'd compare him to more than Odell, is that kind of fluidity and game breaker with that kind of elusiveness. And I think he's just scratching the surface. And yeah, I mean, if a guy who creates that kind of separation isn't athletic enough for you, then I'm not interested in what your standards are.
Absolutely. I do have some curiousness about his ability to get off press, because he is used in slot so much.
Yeah. But you gotta love that versatility.
Yes, I do. And also I think the slot passing game is something that people need to start accepting as being a huge part of an offense. I mean, it's the more highly efficient passing route. The boundary guys, I think, are almost as much about creating separation as they are the actual volume of the pass game. So, and obviously the big, you can get the big knockout shots when you have guys like that on the boundary, but I mean, we're seeing it. The Eagles, the Patriots, even the Rams, the Chiefs, a lot of it is over the middle field passing game, where you find those soft spots between the linebackers and the safeties, or the linebackers and the defensive line. Yeah. And that's what Jeudy, I mean, if you're playing a zone defense and you got Jeudy over the middle in the slot, I mean, good luck. So that's my big takeaway.
How fun would it be to mix and match Noah Fant and Jeudy, as, once in a while you use Fant as the big slot and you put Jeudy outside. then you mix it up, you go off balance, you put Fant, you flex Fant outside, and then you have Judy running off into the slot. You could do so much fun stuff with those two guys alone as part of your receiving core, and just drive defenses crazy.
Nope, you are correct. And it's a pretty good group there. Jordan Love, obviously quarterback 3, but 3 quarterbacks coming up here in the top 10, so worth noting.
Yeah.
And then, so the next guys I'll list, somehow I got my numbering off, but I think I maybe listed 6 of the first one, so we're good though. Number 9, Isaiah Simmons, linebacker / safety from Clemson. Absolute freak athlete. I almost wish he would have come out last year. He could have probably done that, but he looks better right now. I don't know if you watched the Georgia Tech Clemson game, but he looked much better this season as far as the processing and not taking false steps and stuff. So that's a great sign. He might fill in that niche that Dylan Moses left.
Yeah.
Number 8, you're talking about how fun would it be to have Fant and another player mixed up with him. Number 8 is Laviska Shenault, wide receiver from Colorado. Man, just didn't have a huge statistical game against Colorado State, but that's okay. He's going to be everybody's must stop this guy this season, and it'll create for everybody else around him.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert, number 7, quarterback from Oregon. Everybody knows him, the number 1 Pac-12 player there. Number 6, say a little prayer there. Dylan Moses, linebacker from Alabama. Unfortunately, this was before the injury, so Dylan Moses still might even declare next year, just because, go get your money while you can. And we just saw Mac and Jalen Smith get paid big money, so we'll see.
Right.
And number 5, Grant Delpit, safety from LSU.
Okay.
So pretty good list there. I mean, every single one of these guys is an incredible elite talent, in my opinion. Simmons, obviously, if you want to have that guy that we're talking about, that middle of the field passing game, you need to have an athlete that can kind of help cover up those areas. Justin Hollins might be a potential guy that the Broncos can use there, but getting Isaiah Simmons, I mean, you talk about lack of athleticism for the Broncos at that second level. If you get a defensive, sub package for that second level of the defense with Justin Hollins and Isaiah Simmons, you can run with anybody. Like the athleticism would be probably as good as anybody in the NFL for that linebacker group.
100%. And to me, when you write a scouting report on Simmons, that's not even what you mention in the first sentence, is that athleticism. You mention how he's yoked up and plays with just nasty intentions.
Yeah.
I mean, you were saying you wish he would have declared last year. I think he could have easily gone ahead of Devin Bush, and he might have given Devin White a run for his money. Of course, we got to see how he tests, because those guys tested out of this world. But I'm just such a huge fan of his. I'm glad Boogler has him where he does.
Visca,
dude, I mean, hopefully future Bronco, because they love that CU connection. Our guy who covers the Buffs, now that we're back to doing college coverage, Henry Chisholm, called it that Visca would be more of a decoy this year to open up the offense for everyone else. I think we saw that on Friday night in the Rocky Mountain Showdown, and yet he still manages to make some nice plays and get the offense kind of going when they were struggling a bit in the second half, and then makes that just a gorgeous touchdown catch where he has to really, it's like going against his momentum. Yeah. Full extension, bends down to get it, then still stays on his feet to move forward those extra couple inches to get in the end zone. I mean, that's the kind of stuff he's got. I talked to Steven Montez about Visca. I basically let him know what draft Twitter's been saying about Visca and how he doesn't separate enough or run enough pro-style routes. And Montez laughed at the separation and said, even when he doesn't create separation, he's so physical. He's so great at the point of attack, tracking the ball, so physical that he's coming down with it, even if he hasn't cleared it by, even if he hasn't burned his guy. And he then said this year, expect to see more pro-style routes. So excited about that. What do you think of Herbert against Auburn?
I was watching the Hawks game, so that opinion is to be determined. Same time, and I got my brain thinking draft analyst, but my heart is a Hawkeye.
Hey, I get it.
And also, I got to watch Wirfs and AJ Epinesa, so I can do a little bit.
Definitely. A lot of confirmation bias for me on Herbert, where I've, ever since watching him against Josh Allen 3 years ago now, I've had concerns about his ability under pressure, his processing speed, his decision making, and that showed up in a major way in the Auburn game yesterday. I just didn't see a guy who was comfortable and made very few NFL caliber throws. It's just all kind of lateral dump offs, which I like. I like a guy who knows his limitations and knows when to take a dump off. But at the same time, I need to see more by Herbert. Yesterday more than I ever have, I got some real Paxton Lynch vibes, which I guess if you're a member of the Seahawks media, you will tell me that that's not a bad thing. It was us Denver media who turned Paxton Lynch into a bad player. So, hey, that's totally fine. But yeah,
the Seahawks waived him, so he's a bad player then.
Right, exactly. No, I'm sure that was someone else's fault too. Herbert, though, I'm just not high on him. I haven't seen that progression. I think we get so caught up in, he's just a 1-year starter, and yet we don't knock guys who've been starting for damn near 4 years, assuming Herbert can be healthy and start this entire season, and just haven't progressed nearly enough, and that's starting to become a concern with Herbert, where it's like, when's it finally going to click? When's this guy going to really get it between the ears?
Yeah, for sure. And then, so we're talking about Shenault, Simmons, Herbert. We'll save the Moses stuff. I don't think we should take too much time doing that. But the big guy here that I want to talk about is Grant Delpit.
Yeah, stud. What's there not to like about him? You were saying it all of last year. Best safety in college football. I tend to agree. It'll be interesting to see how he picks up the slack with Devin White gone, but the talent's undeniable. A guy who downhill just comes with nasty intentions. And then there's a lot to like in coverage as well. So I'm just really a huge fan. He's 5th on my big board as well.
Awesome. Yeah, really good player. Obviously, the Broncos have Simmons and Parks set to hit free agency next year. And if the Broncos are picking top 10, you really aren't in a position to be pigeonholed to one position. If Delpit's the best playmaker, franchise, cornerstone piece there on the board, you just take it. You don't overthink it. You take the playmaker.
Now, quick question for you. Does he concern you in a cover 3 where it's like you've got an in-the-box guy, but you don't have the deep guy, so you're kind of forced to play him deep? Like, I'd much rather let him roam and be free.
I love him in Fangio's scheme with the multiplicity on the back end, where there's that late movement from the safeties, where one of the safeties can kind of walk down and have that matchup and whatnot. And we already saw Chris Harris Jr. come down and be that nickel blitzer against the 49ers. So I think if it was a pure cover 3, then maybe a little bit. And also I think Grant Delpit could be a little bit better with his tackling technique from time to time, and a little bit more misses than you want in the open field from an elite player like that. But he has great range. He's very versatile and great instincts as well. So I think, especially in this scheme, you pair him with Kareem Jackson, and which one's the free safety, which one's the strong safety? It depends on the look. And you could kind of move those guys around. One walks down. I mean, he could play that dime backer position. He could probably play nickel. He could blitz from that area.
Right, exactly.
So I don't think he's Derwin James, because I don't think he has the same power that Derwin James brings. I mean, there's a physicality that Derwin has that's pretty unparalleled for that position.
Derwin could have played edge if he wanted to.
Yeah, he would have been a great edge player.
Derwin's amazing with that versatility. But there's another guy where the further from the line of scrimmage you play him, the more you feel bad about it. You feel like you're not getting your bang for your buck. But yeah, great point about Fangio's defense, where he could exploit that versatility in full.
Yeah, absolutely. And then rounding out here, the final 4 guys on this list, and 2 of them weren't even starters last year. Crazy. Number 4 overall, Jeffrey Okudah, cornerback, Ohio State. Number 3 overall, AJ Epinesa, edge rusher from Iowa. Number 2, Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback, Alabama. And number 1, edge rusher from Ohio State, Chase Young, And looking at this list, I think probably the only two guys that make sense for the Broncos would be Okudah or AJ Epinesa. Now, Okudah, he is rawer than a lot of these cornerbacks, but his length and tools and click and close are, I would say, unparalleled in this class. The way he can put his back foot in and close on a guy and even give him space and then attack the football is, I mean, I really thought I was watching Marshawn Lattimore out there. A guy with that amount of length but can still close space like he can. Not sure about his ability as far as zone coverage yet. Granted, he's a raw player, but as far as a pure athlete with length and just upside galore, his read and react ability and the twitchiness is just, I mean, it's Madden Factory kind of stuff. So I really like Okudah. And then Epinesa, he's an edge rusher for Iowa, but they're actually starting to move him around a little bit, which is great. Some teams think he might be actually better as a 3-4 defensive end. He's listed at Iowa at 6'6", 280. However, Dane Brugler has him listed here at 6'5", 288. And so that's some pretty big size there. And a guy that I've heard him compared to a lot is Justin Smith from Missouri, who this is years ago we're talking, but Justin Smith was absolutely just dynamic under Fangio in San Francisco. And with how much Fangio loves to use the edge rusher in space, or not the edge, but the 3-4 outside linebacker in space as coverage, to get a Michael Bennett, J.J. Watt, Justin Smith kind of niche player where they're that edge, but they can also kick into 5, 4, 4-eye, or even 3, which seems like with his size and the strength that Epinesa plays with, you could see that. I mean, if the Broncos are picking top 5 and they're not going quarterback, Epinesa has to be right up there, I think. I
think you're underselling him. I mean, Justin Smith, I don't remember him at Mizzou. That was before my time, but
2001, I think.
With the Niners under Fangio, he really kind of mastered that the defensive hold where he's taking up 2 guys and freeing up space for Aldon Smith to come off the edge. I think
he's still at 10 sacks,
is better than that, more than just a gap stuffer. That's interesting.
He was really high. I think Aldon Smith was the main edge rusher there, but I think Smith had like a season with 8.5 sacks and then a season with like 10 sacks. So he was really, really getting after the quarterback there in that scheme.
I mean, is that the ceiling you envision for Epinesa's 8 to 10 sacks as a guy who can gap stuff, but also get in the backfield when that's his primary responsibility?
If you're playing him mainly from the interior and you're getting a double-digit sack guy, that's about as much as you can go for.
That's true.
I'm talking mainly from the interior spot. And also AJ, he's also really good in those stunts. I mean, I've never seen a guy push back 3 guys like he did. There was a play yesterday where he got a bad throw from the quarterback. Granted, again, Miami, Ohio, but he did a stunt. The center and the guard carried him, and then the running back came up, and he pushed all 3 into the quarterback.
Yeah, and anytime we talk about guys who are good on stunts, my eyebrow raises because I think, well, pair that guy with Bradley Chubb, who's so phenomenal on stunts, and you've got something pretty darn special. So that'd be a nice combo. I guess the comp I prefer is Michael Bennett to him, because I think that versatility and whatever front you want to put him in is what really stands out with him, on top of the size and, some pretty intriguing tools.
Hey, if he puts on another 3 pounds, he's the same specs as J.J. Watt.
Yep.
So
we'll see if he's the same sort of freak athlete. My guess is he's not. But who else was in this tier? I've gotten so caught up on AJ now that I've forgotten everything else.
Tua Tagovailoa and Chase Young.
Right. I mean, not much to say about those guys aside from the fact that they're phenoms. Interesting that Tua is a lefty. How will the NFL like him since the league's been so anti-lefties lately? Chase Young, I've been on that train ever since Nick Bosa was out and he kind of got the full-time job and just started killing it. He's just an unbelievable edge rusher, really a special talent. Yeah, there's a lot to like in this draft, that's for sure.
Yeah, I like the top of it pretty early. The thing with Chase Young for me is that I think he probably is more of that pure edge rusher. He doesn't offer that interior upside, doesn't carry the weight like Epinesa does, where Epinesa would be more of a scheme fit and a need fit for the Broncos. And with Von Miller, 31 years old, I mean, that's maybe, if you're presented the opportunity to get a guy that can go out there and play that role, but also offer some insurance in the future for that position, that's something you got to consider. So overall, any of these guys stick out to you as, your favorites? Give me, and obviously I'm reading this list right now, so you don't have it in front of you, but any of these guys as your early draft crushes as far as it pertains to the Denver Broncos.
Go over the top 5 for me again.
Grant Delpit, Jeffrey Okudah, AJ Epinesa, Tua Tagovailoa, and Chase Young from 5-1.
Okudah, I think we're just dreaming on a guy who I'm still not even convinced if he's better suited as a safety. I really don't get that. That's maybe the one we diverge on the most here.
Okay.
And I get it. The tools are lovely. I think as a safety, you could still make them work, but we've got a ways to go. I guess I might be higher on some of the quarterbacks he doesn't have on here. A guy who wasn't in this top 50 and is just barely in my top 50, but is definitely a bit of a prospect crush and a guy who I think could work well for Denver, especially if there's a need for interior O-lineman, is Calvin Thorkmorton, the right tackle for Oregon. Boy, he's just fun to watch.
I'm sorry, when I watch Oregon, my eyes just go to the left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, fair. That whole line there's a lot of talent, which is why on top of Herbert, I think they were a little disappointing to me yesterday. Though, they were rolling for a bit there. So
What's
I think
the left tackle's name? Penny
Sewell? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's
like 360 or something. He's incredible.
Hey man, Cristobal, to his credit, he's taken his bread and butter. He's an O-line coach, and he's made it work to perfection. Dylan Moses was definitely a prospect crush for me, and DeAndre Swift, who I've already mentioned, on top of Laviska Shenault. And I guess maybe Jerry Jeudy compared to Brugler. Paulson Adebo's another. So there's kind of a top 5 prospect crushes. Lesser known, Kellen Bond is a real prospect crush for me. Yeah.
We'll see how he does against Clemson next week. That'll be a hell of a game.
Yeah.
I will be out camping and fishing, so I'll be listening to the radio. Yeah, what can you do? You got to take advantage of the nice weather when you can. And Iowa's playing Rutgers, so this is my chance.
Yeah, definitely take advantage of that.
So my 5 guys, I'm going to be super biased for the first 2, but I just love them too much. I think Tristan Wirfs is a guy that if Garrett Bowles is still not the answer, but he shows enough that maybe you want to use that last year still. Wirfs can play either guard spot or right tackle or left tackle at a high level, and I think he's only 20 years old. He won't be 21 until the next season starts. So he is just,
I guess I didn't realize that. Wow,
he's a
crazy.
baby.
Yeah.
I also believe he's the first offensive tackle, true freshman, to ever start in the Kirk Ferentz era, which speaks highly of his ability and what they think of him. And just a freak. Really, really an interesting player. AJ Epinesa as well. I mean, just because you can get him in there, I think he'd be... I mean, you put Chubb, Vaughn, and Epinesa out there, I don't even know what to think. I'm short-circuiting thinking about it. The next guy for me would be... So I got my 2 Hawkeyes. The next one, Laviska Shenault. I know he's kind of a hybrid everything right now, more pro scheme this year, but I want to see his route running, but his physicality, his size. Broncos, they need speed, but they also need yak ability in that receiving room. Yeah. So you can get him. I think he has the potential also to play all 3 wide receiver spots, and just such a playmaker. Again, is he just going to bust it down the field and break in 40-yard receptions, beating the guy at the line of scrimmage instantly? I mean, given his size, probably not. But just because it's such a space game and getting the ball to space, I mean, I think he's going to run 4.45. I'm not talking about Henry
off
route.
The snap is insane, though. For a guy his size, he's so quick off the snap. That really stands out. The long speed could be better, but yeah. Okay.
Well, but also you put it in context to his frame. I mean, 6'2", 230. It's pretty insane. Yeah. So I think the fact that he could play X, Y, or Z and be a playmaker for this offense in all those regards. Not Y, slot. Y is a tight end. So X, Z, or slot. Yeah. So I have a huge crush on him. That's 3. Number 4 for me would have to be Isaiah Simmons. Just that athleticism, that size, the coverage ability over the middle. Not a perfect linebacker, but when you can have somebody like that, I mean, it's a tight end killer. It's a running back killer in the pass game. And that would really help the zone coverage there. And then I guess the final guy would be Grant Delpit. I love the length. I love the athleticism. Love the ball skills. You put him in a zone scheme, let him go attack, and he can be a playmaker on the back end. Alrighty, well, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos podcast, brought to you by Overtime Media. A special thanks to Andre Simone of BSN Denver for coming on for what was meant to be a quick interview. Man, when you get two draft guys together, it really tends to get going. So thanks a lot to him. Good friend of mine, good guy, smarter draft guy. You can find Carl on Twitter, at Carl Dumler MHH, and myself, at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Broncos analysis. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter, at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl and Andre, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.